And I'm going to go to the docs. Oops. And just grab that set line item context right there. So here's an example here that I'm just going to grab and come over here. So I'm going to do a set line item, cart equals cart, and index equals, and then here I'm going to show you another yep, and I'm going to show you another. I'll type this first, then I'll explain what I'm doing. Need to count my what's up here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Database equals value. And again, we have the ability to specify a description, but I'm going to leave that out for now.
So let's explain that get cares.
Okay. Well, let's explain this whole thing. So the set line item context is used to do just that, set your line items and change information to the order file. We start off with the cart equals cart param, so we know what order file to edit. When you don't specify a file or a file equals param, it knows to grab it from the shopping carts directory. Index, we're going to say which, this is telling the engine to which cart or which line item we're going to edit. And remember, we passed that information by using, let's see if I can find it, by using line index down here. Line index is just simply a number to tell you what order that item is in. So, and what we're doing here is we're getting this get char is we're getting just that line index number. And how we do that is, you notice we prepended each line number with set quantity underscore. So, well, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the 8th number is the line index.
And that'll start at 8, which means if there are 200 items,
right,
it'll get 8, 9, and 10. It just starts at. You can specify an ends at too if you want to cut just a little chunk out for get cares. But we just want everything at 8 and beyond.
Right, and name, because name and value are what we use to reference the name and value.
This can be confusing right here, but it's something you'll do a lot, and that is that we're actually passing some data in the name of the variable. A name-value pair, you always have a name and then the value. You usually think of the data only being stored in the value. We've actually stored a little piece of information in the name itself, and then we use that getCares function to strip that data back out of the name.
Right, and like I think I've said this, that we can, that with the add line item context and with the set line item context, you can do a lot of things, but in this case we're only setting the quantity to whatever new value is coming over. So we don't even really need to check if the quantity is the same here. We could, but it's not needed. We can reset it to its the value that's being passed over.
Can we test this amount?
Sure, we could test this. What I like to do, just like in the add line item context, I'm going to redirect them back to the checkout page.
Good idea.
So that No, it's not really
Yeah,
necessary.
I was just thinking that because you know
in
all the
fact-
quantities are going to stay the
In
same.
fact, I shouldn't do it inside this form variables. I should do it after. Even if, yeah, like Patrick says, even if you do refresh the page, it's just going to refresh to the same information. So it's probably not needed there. So we'll leave that alone. However, so that's if
All the quantities are changed to
right.
something other than 0.
But we also want to keep track of the blank or the 0 values too. We don't want to actually delete them inside this single form variables because we're keeping track of basically what would happen is we run the risk of missing or editing the wrong value for.
What can happen is if you
I'm
assume
having a hard time explaining that part.
Let's say you got 8 items in a cart, and I set the quantity of item number 2 to 0, and we write some clever code here to delete line item 2. Well, now the variables think that line items 3, 4, 5, and 6 refer to those lines when they really actually refer to lines 2, 3, 4, 5. So every line we're editing after that, we're off by 1. So every time you delete a line, you throw off all your variables. So rather than delete a line if it's got a 0 quantity, we're just going to set the quantity of the line to 0 and then hide it down on the page. Here's one way to do it.
So I'm going to check if the value being passed is 0 or nothing, and how I'm doing that is I'm creating a match string here. Value. Let's say if this is if the value being passed is 1, this right here will parse out to something like this. Or if the value is 0, it would parse out to something like this. And since we're doing a contains parameter, this right here equals this, which makes this a true statement. Let's say the value is blank. Well, that parses out to this. So this right here equals this, which makes that a true statement. So we're taking care of both possibilities there with this simple statement. So show if
That's a very elegant little piece of code there. That's nice.
I mean, this little piece of code, somebody told me that piece of code many years ago on the talk list, and it's one of the things I've used the most for a lot of different solutions. So here we're going to create a list, and I'm going to initialize this list above the form variables loop. So text delete. I'm going to call it the delete list because these are the items that we're going to delete. So delete list equals nothing. This just initializes delete list. So the first time we call this variable, it doesn't actually parse to the raw text of delete list. It'll parse to nothing. So down here we're going to start the list. So we're just going to say delete list equals delete list, which right now is nothing on the first pass. And then we're going to create a delimiter, and then name. Simple enough. So this is, we're getting into a little bit more advanced functions here, but what this does, for every time this form variables loops through a product, it will enact this little bit of code. It will set the item being passed and create a delimiter there. So on the first pass, delete list equals blank, and then whatever the first item is that's coming over. On the second pass, or second loop, delete list equals the old